Hey guys, it's Dan. Welcome to my messy garage on a rainy day in Fort Worth, Texas. I wanted to intro this next podcast because it's pretty cool and it's pretty special to me because my daughter Evelyn is actually studying CGI computer animation at Wichita State University. And she had a project where she was supposed to find a fantasy creator and interview them podcast style. So she got in touch with me and asked me if she could talk to John. And of course, I said I think that would be fantastic. So this is me introducing you to my daughter, an incredibly talented creator herself, writer and animator, artist all around, Evelyn Johnson, interviewing John about uh, the origins of the Celestial Wars and his history and his story as a writer.
Yeah,
Hope you
I
enjoy.
bet.
Yeah, so how you doing? What's it like being a student at Kansas State? Is that right?
No, it's Wichita State.
Oh,
Close.
okay.
Um, I mean, it's good. I like it so far. It's been a little crazy with finals and stuff, but um, yeah.
It's good. It's good enough.
Yes,
And
good.
what
Yes.
are you majoring in?
It's media arts with a concentration in animation.
Okay.
So
Oh,
yeah,
nice. And so you're going to be an animator?
I hope so.
Do
All
you
goes well.
have you done some art already? Do you have examples of your art out there?
I have some like traditional art, like I have a website that I just made. I mean, I can send it to you if you want to look at it, but
Yeah,
I
yeah, I'd
mean,
love to see what you're doing. So,
yeah, but
and
it's
we're
like charcoal drawings and pastels and stuff like that. So,
We're looking for an illustrator right now. If you got any fellow students that you think are really talented and
mhm,
they would be able to fit to the way you see those books in your head, we're trying to find an illustrator to illustrate maybe a short story because we're out there in the metaverse, right?
mhm,
And in the metaverse, it's not about putting a book out there, it's about putting a book and all of the related things out there that give you a deeper experience. And so illustration would help it just make a stronger book out there in the metaverse. So we're looking for somebody. And
yeah. I don't think I know anybody personally, but you
if
can
you
reach
run
out.
across somebody, so
Yeah, but I'm sure there's a student that would love to do that or work on that. I'm sure.
well,
I don't know anybody.
okay. Okay, well, so go ahead, and you wanted to talk to me about being an author, which
Yes.
I've been writing all my life, but I've been a professional author for about 3 or 4 years now, and have
Mhm.
written 8 books altogether.
Eight.
Yeah, so I started with. Do you want me to just tell you about it and talk to you a little bit, or do you have specific
Yeah, that
questions?
was my first question is how
Oh,
did you start writing?
well, so I've been writing since I was writing poetry in junior high school. Okay, and poetry was always my first love. And so I actually, I was in sales, I was very successful in sales, so I was always making plenty of money. But at somewhere in my mid 30s, I just decided that I was going to be a writer. And so I sold everything I had. I took off for Austin, and I lived down in a little efficiency in South Austin, and was determined to make my poetry work. And so even got up on stage and did the slam thing on stage and was
Okay.
totally into it. I was spending about half a day reading the classics because I always thought, they're classics for a reason. It's great stories. And I found out that's exactly right. So I read some fantastic stories by Hemingway and all the rest of them and got a feel for what great literature is all about. And then the other half of the day, I'd write poetry. And one of the things I was doing during that time was working for the Austin Writers League. Well, so
Oh,
we had a guest poet coming into town from Louisiana, and her name was Laurel Ann Bogan, and I think she was had 6 books out. She was a Pulitzer nominee, and she was just fantastic. Up on stage, she just owned the stage, and so did fantastic stuff. And I took her out to dinner before that, and since I was her chaperone while she was in town, I took her out to dinner before that, and I asked her a question that changed my life. And that was, I said, Laurel Ann, how much money have you made writing poetry in your life? And she said, oh, I can tell you that. She says, in 27 years of writing poetry, I've made a total of $17,000. And I was like, well, that's not going to work as a living. And soon after that, I had my computer broken. I was so poor, I had to figure out how to fix it myself. It took about 4 days, and I finished and went, "Wow, that's the best puzzle I've ever come across." And so I had a lot of fun fixing them. And then next thing you know, I have a friend's computer go out, and I'm like, "Well, I think I can help you with that." And then I from there it just kind of took off, and I ran my own little Campbell's Computer Connection for a while, and then I ended up going to work for Dell and was there for 22 years and was raising a son and was lost in the tech industry, and then finally was able, because I made enough money, I was able to retire early and come back to writing, which was always my first love. So the first thing I came out with was a book of poetry that I'd been working on until I was in my 30s, and it was a good book in general, because it was the poetry of my lifetime up till then. It wasn't just, just this little bit of poetry. It was all the best poems that I'd done up to that point. And I called it A Week of Years. And it was all about what happens after you lose the great love of your life, which was I had a really good love when I was 20. It was magical and it was great. And then it ended. And it took it for a while, it was how to put one foot in front of the other. And so some interesting poetry came out of that, and the book came out of it, and I published that. And I was like, well, I joined Dell when there were 5,000 people there, and when I left, there were 138,000. And so I was like, there's a pocket full of good stories there. And so I wrote, writing on the coattails of genius, and I got nice little feedback from Michael Dell listened to it, and it was me narrating at the time. And he listened to it, and he says great job, and so he enjoyed it. And it was just a fun little book that I was doing, that I just felt like I had to tell the stories. But then I really wanted to write something for the market, and I just I knew that the subject of religion was a powerful subject, and so I had a Catholic upbringing, so I used part of that to create this series about a bunch of angels' kids, right? And the evils that they come up against and the fights that they get into. And I called it the Celestial Wars. And I started off with Wait on the Ripper, and it just took off from there. And I got through 6 books and then decided that I'd learned so much about the art of writing that I had to go back and revise, because I was just on Amazon till then, and I was doing good on Amazon, right? But I decided I needed to go out to the wide world. And when I was going to do that, I was going to revise first. And then I'd have them in a shape where they could just stay for the next, for eternity, right? For as long as they're on the market. And so I did that, revised the 6 books. Dan re-narrated them. And that whole project was because I don't need the money, right? I could do this, but it was extremely eye-opening, because the changes were to just really tighten up the story, make all of the dialogue good and clean, get rid of all the extra little things where you bring time in there. You don't really have to talk about time that much and things like that, and just make the sentences sing as much as I could. And then Dan Johnson, my narrator, came in and re-narrated, and it was interesting because he did just a bang-up job on the first books, the first time they came out. And then he came back, and he knows these characters so well that, and his delivery has gotten more dramatic. And so he came up with this more dramatic delivery, and he nailed the characters and just did a fantastic job. And so I've got these revised books out here now. I'm just finishing revising book 6, and we're going to finish putting them out. And then I've got book 7 about halfway written, and so I'm going to go back to 7.
Okay.
And it's a 12-book arc called the
Wow. I thought it was
Wars.
ending at 6, book 6, because I saw it was on Audible. It was like 2021 that it was revised or something like that. And I was like, oh, well, it's over.
Well, it hadn't been revised yet, so I'm still working on 6. But when it gets revised, it'll be out there, and then I will continue the series. And the point is to bring him into the war between the angels and the fallen angels, and have him make a difference in that. And so he starts out as this little old detective here in Austin, doesn't even know that he has any superpowers. He's just had some strange things go on in his life. And then this devil comes to town who's been murdering women for centuries, and which is Jack the Ripper is a devil. He's a supernatural entity. And he in the process of trying to hunt him down. First of all, he becomes the hunted, which is it gets interesting there. But then he meets these other children of angels. The sons and daughters of angels are Nephilim, so he meets these other Nephilim and begins to understand his powers. And in every book, his powers grow. And in the end, he's got to be strong enough to take on fallen angels in mass in the middle of a war, and or however that plays out. And so he has to be very, very powerful. So it's all about the growth of a superpowered character, which I don't know if you ever looked at anime. I love anime, and so there's
really?
superpowered characters in there. One Hitman, right? So things like
Mhm.
that. So I love the ability to take a superpowered character and to keep growing them, right?
Mhm.
There's a new one that just came out this year, which is what's that one called, son? Where I gained cheat skills in another world and it affected me in the real world or something like that. And it's just beautifully done. And they have him gaining more power in every episode. And I like that because you're never really writing the same thing twice, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to always put the challenges, you have to increase the challenges and you have to increase their powers and you have to make it all believable along the way. And so I'm getting ready to get started on the second half of that series here in the next month or two. After I move.
After you move, yeah.
Okay, so there's my story. So what questions do you have about that?
Okay, so I know your first book was poetry. Did you publish that on like Amazon or did you have it like read at
No,
all?
just on Amazon. I read it myself. I narrated it myself because I've got a
Okay.
pretty good voice, and it was my poetry that I'd been slamming
Mm.
already. So I knew how I wanted to present it. I did the second book as well, but when I came to the professional series, I decided my voice wasn't good enough, and
Yeah.
I went looking for a narrator, and I went through about 200 people, and then I found Dan, and I heard him the first time I heard him. I just knew he was the one, right? Just immediately knew it. I called my son and I said, "You got to listen to this voice." And he listened. He goes, "Oh yeah, that's the one, Dad." And I said, "Yeah, it makes you want to hear more, doesn't it?" Because I'd only heard 5 minutes of him recording at that point.
Mhm.
I hadn't heard anything more, and it was just reading, one of the scenes. And he did such a beautiful job on it. It made you want to hear more. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's a great thing. And Kent said the same thing. He said, my son said, yeah, it makes you want to hear more. And
That's
so,
good. So was your poetry book like successful at all? Like to where Celestial Wars is, or is it just like was it like just kind of like your start into like book publishing and stuff like that?
so you've sort of hit on the key challenge for any writer nowadays, and that is how to market yourself. I had a conversation with Dave Chesson, who is I'd actually got to talk to him for an hour on the phone, and he's one of the major teachers of writers. And he told me, he said, write 6 books before you even think about marketing them.
Oh
And
wow.
that's because nobody really cares about one book anymore. They want a series.
Mhm.
They want to get into it, and they want a series. And on top of that, you don't really know enough about it to dive into something that is extremely competitive and very hard to pin down. And so I didn't even market them. I just let them go out there. The poetry book got some response, and it's I got 5 stars on it, which is good. The book about Dell got some response. The series, I think I'm up to like 77 4.5 star reviews on Amazon right now. And then the books on Audible are 5 stars because Dan's voice made that half a star
Mm.
difference, right? But I never even tried to market them because and I shouldn't say that. I put my foot in the water and that was it. And just to get a little feel for things. But I was on a platinum marketing council at Dell. I know marketing, and I
Yeah.
knew I was going to have to make a concentrated effort to market to get them to rise through the ranks and actually become very successful books, right? So everything that's up till now has been organic, but once I actually start marketing, you have to go in, you have to be ready to spend the money to market, and you have to market steadily, and you have to be very smart about how you build your marketing out to make your book, reach the bestseller list and actually make any real money on it at all. Not many authors do, right?
Mm.
So you go out there and you work hard and you spend your money, you do all your stuff, and you still never hardly make more than a break even. Kind of like the poetry, right? You can write poetry all your life, you can be great at it, and you can still be lucky if you're making any money at all. So writing is just going to be like that. There's the few that make a lot, but most people really struggle to make any sort of a living at all. It should be more of a second job than a first job. And and that's sort of true with art in general, right? So Dan's also a singer, and he struggles to make money off of his, and he's a really good singer and a really good writer. I mean, superior, and he still struggles to make the money. My brother's an artist and has been doing photography and art all his life, and he runs a photography business, and he, a good year he'll make 40,000 on a good year, right? And he's done the best he can to get out there and to really make and he's and being an artist and a photographer, he can use Photoshop and just do incredible things with his art, and yet he's still just making ends meet. And and as a writer, that's what you're going to do. You're going to be lucky. You can make ends meet. You make ends meet. You never get rich unless you break through. And if you break through, it's really going to be a lot of marketing effort and a little bit of luck. So I have one more story about this if you want to know it. So marketing, so marketing is there's so many people, there's millions of books on Amazon, right? And your book doesn't rise up to the top by itself. It rises to the top because you've been pushing marketing dollars at it to the point where instead of just break even, you're actually making money. But that's a very crowded, very competitive field because everybody wants to write, right? And you can nowadays. And so I actually went in a different direction and went out to the metaverse and started trying to market in the metaverse, because the metaverse is, and I don't even know what that is. Have you ever heard of that before?
I've heard of it, but I'm not quite sure like what it entails. Is it just like forums, or like is it like social media? Is it like what is it exactly? Is
So
it
the
something not even close to that?
No. The techie in me really wants to tell you this. So the first version of the web was CompuServe and AOL. It was dial-up. It was modems and dial-up. Then the second version of the web came along, and that was the www with Amazon and Facebook and all of them. The third version of the web is like the persistent worlds, right? The Roblox of the world, where everybody gets in there and plays and goes in and out of a persistent world. The major games that are out there, even little things have been around for a long time, like Pokemon Go, right? I don't know if you're familiar with that, but where you actually drive around to different locations and you find and you capture these Pokemon. Well, that's going to be the third version of the web, is this much more interactive. As computers can do it, we're going to be using computers in much different ways than we did in Web 2, and that will be that interactive, computerized world that we're going to live in, that allows us to do things like, go look at the fruit in the store and pop up a screen and find out which is the freshest fruit, right? Where you got 1,000 sensors on a plane, and if anything goes wrong, those sensors know it before you can get on the plane, right? And so there's going to be a lot of very interactive things. Think of it as being divorced from your desktop screen, not really even focused on the phone anymore, just having computers there all the time, right? Invisible presence all around you, trying to take care of your needs in very graphic and very interactive ways. That's the third version of the web. That's what they're calling the metaverse. So the metaverse is actually just the next version of the web, and everybody will be there eventually. So I wanted to go there early because I'm a techie, right? And so I actually got the ear of a major publishing company, has a unit called the Bookwire out in Europe. Major publishing company has a unit that they put up to do nothing but metaverse for artists. And so Creatokia has been in existence for over a year now, and they've been busy putting their framework together to support authors into the metaverse. And I actually went to them and said, I want to go into the metaverse with y'all. And the person that leads the New York office here in the States liked what she saw about my ideas for the metaverse, and she took me on. And so I've been working with Creatopia for the last 6 months now, and trying to and they're doing the same thing, trying to figure out how to market to this new medium, which is really just a more interactive way of doing things. So there's some pieces to that I could get into with NFTs and things like that. But the basic thing is that here comes the next version of the web. If I can get on there early enough, and actually, I'm working with the publishing company, which 1 in 50,000 authors gets to do, and so that's an advantage right there. But if I get out there and when it gets big, if I was one of the first ones out there and my work is seen as valid and interesting, and I've got enough things going on out there, I've built enough of a presence that I get successful. I could get more successful in the metaverse than I ever could get by just doing the basic advertising thing. So I'm working on that, but that's probably still a few years away. So all the work I'm doing now is for the future on that one. But I don't have a problem with that, because that's with technical stuff. It always starts small and then it gets huge real quick.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move on.
Yeah, please. I'm sorry. I can talk. So.
Okay, so this is about your book series now, and I was wondering, like, where did you come up with like the idea of your series? Like, I know you said you had like religious background, but like, why? Like, where did you come with of focusing the main character on being like a Nephilim and part angel? Like, where did that even come from? Like where did the character Harmon come from?
It all comes from multiple. I mean, a good story always has multiple places that it comes from. The first thing I had was the name. So I knew for 10 years I wanted to write about a detective by the name of Harmon Waite. Detectives always have to have great names, Sherlock Holmes, Hieronymus Bosch, all of them have these interesting names. Well, I thought Harmon Waite was just the harm and the weight and the harmony and all of the little interplays of the word just appealed to me. And so I just loved the name Harmon Waite. And then I came across a newspaper article from the Austin American Statesman from the late 1800s, where they were talking about Jack the Ripper in Austin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like a 6-part series, and he was supposed to have gone from after he finished in England, he disappeared, and then he was supposed to have come to Austin, and he was in Austin. A Texas sheriff, John Bracken, hunted him down and killed him, and so it was really another guy, right? But for a while, the Austin American Statesman was carrying this guy's as Jack the Ripper, because he was murdering women one after the other, and he was using, I think, an axe most of the time. And so I saw that story, and that kind of made Jack the Ripper well, what if Jack the Ripper was actually immortal? Oh, what if he was a devil, right? Oh, well, and so I've got a little bit of history here from Austin American Statesman. I got the brain, the gray matter going, and then I thought perfect foil for the son of an angel, and so I had him taking on a devil in his first adventure, and luckily a devil is not anywhere near as powerful as some of the other stuff he's taken on since, but it was a good way to get him started, and it made for a good story, I think. So
yeah, it was definitely interesting. I was like, where did he get this from? When I was listening to it, I was like, it's crazy. I'm like, it's good. It's just crazy.
Yeah, thank you.
I love crazy concepts. So
the only other thing I was trying to accomplish with that, besides making it powerful and interesting, was to move it fast. I love stories where it just keeps moving. I love the Harry Dresden stories. And if the book resembles anything, it resembles one of the Harry Dresden novels, in that's a wizard as well, who's a detective. He's a Chicago wizard, Harry Dresden, and his books, once they start, they just keep building like that, and the action happens so fast, right? And everything keeps evolving so quickly that just carries you through. You don't want to stop reading; it just carries you through. And I try to create stories that were the same way, that just kept, it's like a roller coaster ride down a dark highway, right? You just keep going.
Yeah, I noticed that. because I listen to audiobooks when I'm doing my classes just because I can multitask like that.
Uh,
And I was just like, bam, bam, bam. And I was like, whoa, because I just kept listening to it because one chapter kind of leads into the next. So yeah.
yeah, a lot of little cliffhanger stops and
Mhm.
then a cliffhanger ending at the end. So
I haven't gotten there yet. So
yeah, you will well, and it'll actually be. I think you're reading the trilogy, so you won't quite get there. But
Mhm.
I was doing cliffhanger endings and doing the first chapter of the next book, resolve the cliffhanger ending. I put it at the end of the book so people could actually see what was going on. But that was like, that was like any TV show series where they're trying to keep you involved. I would try to keep them involved at the beginning and the end of the first book, bring an interesting resolution, and then carry them off into a new adventure with that first chapter of that next book. And so you'll see as you get to the end of one and you get to the first chapter of the next, kind of note in your own mind that was supposed to be that was the first book when before I put the trilogy together. So
that goes into my next question. When you originally planning out the story, did you want to have 6 books in mind, or well, 12 books in mind, or was it with just the first book and then you were like, okay, I gotta like continue this now?
yeah, no, it was originally I created a 12 book arc in my mind, and I knew in general what I wanted to have happen in each book, and
Mhm.
so I'm going down that road and wanting to do that evolution of a superhero in degrees that make it, in my mind, really interesting. How does it not just, oh, he went from zero to hero, but
Mhm.
he it's all the little steps along the way, all the challenges that he had to meet and the trials that he had to meet to take that next step up in the evolution of the superhero.
Okay.
Yeah, so I knew I was going to do 12 books from the beginning.
Okay. That's great. That's amazing. Like
Well,
I
the
could never.
universe is so big that
Yeah.
it's kind of good that I was thinking 12, because I can see now it's going to take 12 books to tell about this.
Yeah.
And the fun part along the way is I came up with these characters. They just sort of created themselves. And I don't know if you, once you read the book, you might go back and look. There's a short story about Smoke that I think is
Oh,
maybe,
really?
yeah, this maybe Dan and I's best collaboration. And it's just a little short story, and you get a little more background on Smoke when he's a young brave and he's hunting a shapeshifter. And then
Mhm.
there's one about Arian, and
Okay.
because she's really just a great character, and she's been one of the best swords people on the planet for a long time, for centuries, right? And
Mhm.
so back when in the in her earlier years, it was hard to be a woman and be a swords person because it just wasn't accepted, and so she hid her identity. She became a man and became a musketeer. And so
Oh,
and you'll see some of that in the first book still, but that story, that little piece from the first book, led into a short story where she's actually chasing a loup garou, which is a werewolf over in France, and she's a member of the musketeers, and she actually meets up with D'Artagnan, who's been, it's same time frame, right? And so he's one of the three, he was the fourth of the three musketeers, right? And so
mhm.
D'Artagnan, who was a real world character back in France, shows up, and he's her captain, and then it becomes sort of a love interest going on. So
Um,
that's a great story. And then I wrote about and you haven't even met him yet, but Drek the Dragon deserved his own story. That was actually Dan going, why did the dragon get imprisoned on a planet for 2,000 years? What did he do that made it worthwhile to imprison, that made it necessary to imprison him on a planet for so long? And so I wrote that story. And so those are all, they're just great characters, and they really, each one of them could demand their own story. There's one that I almost think could have a whole series written on, which is Azrakeel, which you won't run across yet, but I actually molded him on Dan a little bit, and he's the angel of justice. And so Azrakeel shows up, and I think it's the fifth book, and his character is so powerful and
mhm.
so good that I could just go off and do a separate series with him because he's so much fun.
Wow. Okay. And then just a couple more questions. I see the time up there.
Yeah,
I'm trying to hurry it up.
I'm happy to meet with you again anytime.
Right. Okay, and then I kind of wanted to talk about the revision. I know we touched on that earlier, but were was the process better than the first time, or did you find more complications at all with the process of revision?
It's a great question. So I wrote, and I just got really involved in writing, and I learned, just like anything else, you learn your art as you go. And so the second time around, I knew what a good sentence was, right? The first time I was just figuring things out, but now I knew what a good sentence was. I knew what a paragraph to make a paragraph actually sing. And
Mm.
I wanted every paragraph to sing to me, to actually, flow and have meaning. The poet in me just wanted that rhythm and wanted that feel. And so I went in and redid every single paragraph and was very much, it was easier for me to do that by far the second time around than it was trying to mess with it 50 times the first time around.
Yeah.
And so I really feel like I came up with a better product, and I'm happy that I did it. It took almost a year, but
Oh
I'm
wow.
happy that I did it. So, well, revising 6 books, and I went through every paragraph and looked at every word and the structure of all the logic of everything that's going on. A lot of the little things in the conversations came out because they just were sort of like they were loose ends or dead ends. I tightened up all the conversations so that everything was more interesting that they were saying, and there wasn't any little offshoots of things going on. And so it was a lot of work, but it was also, really helped me to understand my art. And for
Yeah.
me, because I'm retired and I've got enough money, it's just all about understanding the art, which
Mm.
I've loved writing all my life. So I was going to do that.
Yeah. Okay. And then here's my final question. Um, Besides metaverse and stuff, is there any upcoming projects you're working on, book wise, personal wise, that you'd like to share at all?
Thank you very much. I'm right in the middle of the Celestial Wars right now. And so I got 6 more, I got 5.5 books to write still. That I expect to take another 2 or 3 years. I expect in there the metaverse to take off. And then I've held off on standard marketing until I can finish exploring the metaverse. But I will be getting back into the marketing of the books, which will take probably months to figure out and do properly. And so I will be very much involved in marketing these books. So for the next 2 or 3 years, it's all about that universe. And which is luckily it's a great universe. I'm a lot of fun with it. The characters are a lot of fun and very powerful. So there's a lot of things that can be written about them. And I will just stay with that. After that, I don't, if I was going to say anything else, I would say that if you really want a shortcut to becoming a successful author, there are certain boxes that you should be checking. And I didn't know how to check any of those boxes when I was first starting. And so I didn't do all the things I needed to, but the second time around, I'd probably try to figure out how to, find an interesting novel within the framework of being able to check all the boxes. Like, if you're writing supernatural fiction like I am, it's going to struggle to do anything. If you're writing cozy mysteries, there's more readers out there than there are books, right? And so writing a cozy mystery, you can find success much easier and you can find sales much easier. You really want to do it right. Romance is, all women in the world read romance, and there's not enough romance novels out there to fill that
Yep.
need. And historical romance in particular has great sales attached to it. And so I would, if I was a new writer coming in and I knew what I was doing, I would go through and use the tools like Dave Chesson has a tool called Rocket that is fantastic at helping you understand what the marketplace actually looks like and what's selling and who's writing it. And I would go in and really dissect what would get to be successful without so much extra marketing effort, what would kind of help carry itself forward. And I would write a series under that. Just because I wouldn't have to worry about marketing nearly so much. And you can find
Yeah.
good stories in anything, right? There's every person in this world has a good story to tell. And so there's good stories that you can always find an easier one to market than the one that you just think you had come off the top of your head and go, oh, that might be interesting. Well, okay, yeah, it was, but it wasn't really going to market very well. So
Yeah. All righty. I forgot what else I was gonna say. Because I had another. Oh, I remember. Sorry, I have
take your time.
ADHD. Um, I was wondering if you're gonna ever think about publishing your books like in print and selling them like at local bookstores or anything. Have you ever thought about doing that, or are you just gonna keep strictly to like web-based Amazon type of thing?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a great question. I do have them. I had them printed, and I think the first book may still be in print on Amazon. But I will do print. It's so and so it's a whole nother subject, darn it. But publishing on Amazon is the easiest way to get started. You don't have to do anything.
Mhm.
The rest of the world, so that's probably 80% of sales that are out there anyway. And so it's low-hanging fruit. The other 20% of sales are the rest of the world, like libraries and the Barnes and Noble and all the rest of these outlets all around the world are maybe 20% of your sales. And to get out to that market and to do all the things that you need to is a lot of work. I will do it because it helps me create the presence for the books. And I will be doing print not only on Amazon, but print for the rest of the world, ebooks for the rest of the world, audio, which as far as I'm concerned with Dan is just by far the best way to consume this series.
Yeah.
And which is I've focused on going into the metaverse as well. And I will try to market these things as fully as I can, because the marketing guy in me goes, well, if you're going to be successful, you've got to go hit all of the hot buttons, right? And that's what I'll do, is try to hit them all and get it out everywhere eventually.
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 Eventually. But yeah, I really love the audiobook. I mean, I love print, but I feel like I can consume more with audio. Just because I can do two things at once than like sitting down and reading a book. But so far, I think the series is great. So I'll keep reading for sure.
When you have a magical voice like Dan Johnson's. Yeah, so what I got to ask you, and we only got a minute left, but what's the most interesting scene or that you've seen that you've read in the book so far, listened to so far?
I was gonna ask a question about it, but we didn't have time. But it's the part where Jack brings Harmon to hell. And was there Dante Inferno references when he was in the circles of hell, or is that like a Bible thing? Because I haven't read the Bible, but I have read
Yeah.
Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
So
It's like a little bit of, but Dante's Inferno is definitely sticks in my mind. So there's a little bit of that there, and there's a little bit of other, religions in there as well, because I've studied a lot of religions, and more than anything, it's just a really powerful scene to take him into hell.
yeah,
There's another scene where where I do the same thing with Israel, and that one scene, I did a little 1 minute video on it, and that scene had 1,000 views on it. It had so many more views than the rest of them. So just anything about hell, it's powerful. And so thank you. Yeah, I think where he takes in the hell is great. And
yeah. Or it's that one. I think isn't he like? I think it's Purgatory, and he finds like his light powers. That was cool. I did
yeah,
like that part.
yeah, when
I
he
did.
falls down the rabbit hole the first time and ends up
Yes.
with Jack the
Yeah.
Ripper in the dark.
Uh-huh.
And
Mhm.
yeah. No, I've loved writing it. I'm still in love with the series. I will continue to write it until I get through all 12 books, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Maybe I'll take off with this Racul and go on other adventures.
Yeah.
He's an archangel. He's lived forever, and he has plenty of adventures that he's been on.
Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.